When we design a study, we have to make various decisions related to the timing of when data should be collected and how time is considered. That can be a challenge because time passing can create change that we don't want. For instance, if we run a survey, but that takes a bit of time until all the interviews have been conducted, and then something significant happens, changing the entire public discourse around the topic we're studying, for example. So this creates a variation that we actually didn't want or intend to have. But the potential change can also be an asset for studies, creating sometimes something like a natural or a social experiment in the course of a study that we planned for or that we probably didn't plan for. After all, what we want to explain is usually that things vary or that things change, and observing that change can be very helpful in social research. So there's 3 core decisions regarding time that we should take seriously when planning a study and designing a study. First would be what time period overall the study should cover, and in addition, whether time is a significant source of variation, something we want to exploit, something we want to analyze the course of time and how it creates change, or not. The first response to that could be, no, we're not interested in what happens over time. We can have a purely so-called cross-sectional study that is not interested in what happens over time. It just wants one snapshot, and that your snapshot may unfold over a bit of time is more of a nuisance in a cross-sectional design than an asset. So think, for example, of a one-shot experimental study that collects data in a single 20-minute session in the classroom. Time is not at the center of interest here. It is cross-sectional. We want one measurement in the end of the dependent variable and attribute it to the experimental stimulus. The session just takes 20 minutes to complete this task and make the measurement, so we are not interested. But studies can also be longitudinal, so they are interested in what happens over time and try to exploit that. Think of another experimental study, and this takes data in 2 classroom sessions 2 weeks apart to see if the experimental stimulus really had a long-term or just a short-term effect. So a long-term effect would be found in both sessions. Sorry, the text skipped both, so is wrong. So this should be short-term. So had short-term effects only found in the first but not the second session, or long-term effects found in both the first and the second session. So time is of central interest here, and that makes it longitudinal. But there's different kinds of longitudinal studies, and also cross-sectional studies have to deal with the complexities of the time periods. So the second question, both for cross-sectional and longitudinal, is whether the period covered is a continuous period or there are several discrete time points or periods that are being covered. Example of a non-continuous study would be a study of intra-organizational change in response to a new leadership team that is studied over a 6 months period. However, the observations occur in 3 chunks of just 1 week. So 1 week in month 1, 1 week in month 3, and 1 week in month 6. For example, because the leadership presents certain plans or changes in the 2nd month and in the 5th month, so you want to see the effects of these organizational changes in measurements 2 and 3. But we don't collect data continuously throughout the period of time. A more continuous way or approach would be a content analysis of the evaluation of a politician in the news that tracks that politician or the depiction in the news of that politician through her 20-year career and analyzes all coverage about that politician. Or probably just a random sample of that coverage, but doesn't subdivide it into, let's analyze the 1st year, the 5th year, the 10th year, and so on, but continuously takes data. Good. And then particularly particularly relevant in survey research, the question whether the same units are measured several times. This can even happen in content analysis if you, for example, want to study whether journalists do correct their articles or edit their articles over time. Then you might analyze the same unit, the same article several times and look for the change. But it's much more straightforward for persons. There we talk about a so-called panel survey or a panel study. A survey, so the persons participating several times in the same study would then be the panel. Imagine a survey of 1,000 Norwegians and they are being asked about the party they intend to vote for 4 weeks prior to election day. So that's our first measurement, 4 weeks before election day. On the day after the election, the same respondents are re-interviewed about which party they actually had voted for in the election. So that's the second time they are surveyed, and it's the same 1,000 persons, and we can see thereby, by coupling each individual to their 2 responses, how that individual has changed or not changed their decision and analyze why. So this is again a good way to come towards causality. Not as strong as the experimental evidence, of course, but if we know what happened to an individual in these 4 weeks between the first and the second interview and see how they changed their decision, we might come close to identifying the possible causes for this change in the decision. Take a non-panel study or so-called trend survey. In contrast, here a survey of 1,000 Norwegians is also asked about the party they intend to vote for 4 weeks prior to election day. And on the day after the election, again a survey occurs, but it's another set of respondents, a different set of respondents, and they tell you which party they had voted for in that election. Then we can see voter travel in the aggregate, so how many more people now support this party than before, but we don't see for the individual the change that happened. And therefore this is much weaker evidence when we want to go for causal analysis of change or non-change. Yes. So that would be the three core decisions regarding time that apply to all kinds of studies. What time period should be covered? Should it be covered continuously, or are there several discrete time points or periods covered, and are the same units measured several times?